Cerro Zapotecas. This is a true story. 2 weeks ago, my best friend Diego and I went into the Devil's Cave in Mexico. We came out 3 days later, but only I'm here to tell you what happened. Diego went back, and I know exactly where he is right now. My name is Marcus Reyes. I'm 24 years old, a senior at Universidad de las Americas, Puebla, studying anthropology. For the past 3 years, I've run a blog called Modern Mexican Myths, where I debunk urban legends using science and sociology. I don't believe in ghosts, I don't believe in demons. Or at least I didn't. I built my entire academic reputation on rational explanations. Every supposedly haunted location I investigated had a logical answer: carbon monoxide causing hallucinations, infrasound creating feelings of dread, or simple mass hysteria. My thesis advisor loved my work. My followers loved the certainty I provided. The world made sense, and I could explain every shadow, every strange sound, every chill down someone's spine. Cerro Zapotecas was supposed to be just another case study, just another legend I could tear apart with facts and data. I met Diego Santos in high school back when we were both trying to figure out who we were. He went the artistic route, freelance photographer specializing in abandoned places and allegedly haunted locations. While I built my career on skepticism, Diego built his on belief. He was 25, lived alone in a cramped apartment in Cholula, and genuinely thought every shadow held a secret. We were opposites in every way that mattered. It was late June when we reconnected at a bar in Cholula. Diego had just returned from Guanajuato, where he'd been photographing Las Momias, the Mummy Museum. He showed me a picture on his camera, his hands shaking slightly as he zoomed in on one corner. "Look at this, Marcus. Look right there." His finger pointed to what appeared to be a 13th figure in a room that housed only 12 mummies. I leaned closer already, forming my explanation. Pareidolia. Your brain is wired to see faces and human shapes in random patterns. Add low light and the psychological priming of being in a creepy place. "I took 50 shots from the exact same angle," Diego interrupted. "Only this one has the shadow, and the shadow is looking directly at the camera. We argued for hours. The tequila flowed, our voices got louder, and somewhere around midnight, fueled by alcohol and stubborn pride, I issued a challenge. Fine. You want to prove this supernatural bullshit is real? Pick the most haunted place in Puebla. I'll go with you. I'll debunk every single thing you think is paranormal, and you'll finally admit that there's a rational explanation for everything." Diego's eyes lit up with something I should have recognized as warning. Deal. Cerro Zapotecas, la Cueva del Diablo. My laugh died in my throat. Of all the locations I'd researched, Cerro Zapotecas was the only one that gave me pause. Not because I believed the legends I didn't, but because the statistics were troubling. 17 people had gone missing on that mountain in the past 50 years. 17. The police called them accidents, people getting lost in the cave system or falling into unseen crevasses. But locals told different stories. They spoke of La Cueva del Diablo, the Devil's Cave, where time ran wrong, and people who entered with desires in their hearts never came back out. "You're serious," I said. "Dead serious. We camp overnight. We go into the cave at 3 a.m. when the activity is highest, as the legends say. You document everything scientifically, I photograph everything artistically, and we finally settle this." I should have said no. Every instinct I didn't know I had screamed at me to walk away. But my pride, that damn pride that made me think I was smarter than centuries of folklore, wouldn't let me back down. "Fine, but we do this properly. We bring the right equipment. We tell someone where we're going." Diego grinned and extended his hand. "Deal." We shook on it. Neither of us knew that handshake was a contract we couldn't break. I spent the next 2 weeks researching Cerro Zapotecas from every scientific angle I could find. The mountain stood at 800 meters above sea level, covered in pine and oak forest. During the day, it was a paradise for mountain bikers and hikers, but after sunset, the trails emptied. No one stayed after dark. The geological surveys fascinated me. The cave system was natural, formed by volcanic activity roughly 2 million years ago. The main cavern descended approximately 200 to 300 meters, with numerous branching tunnels easy to get lost in if you weren't careful. The temperature inside averaged between 10 and 12 degrees Celsius, significantly cooler than the surface. High humidity could create auditory illusions, making dripping water sound like whispers, and in deeper sections, carbon dioxide levels could spike, causing dizziness and hallucinations. Perfect. Every supposed supernatural phenomenon had a scientific explanation waiting to be discovered. But one detail bothered me. All 17 disappearances occurred between 2 and 4 a.m. Police attributed this to fatigue. People were most tired during those hours, more prone to accidents. But the precision of the pattern felt too exact, too deliberate. I told myself it was confirmation bias. I was looking for patterns because humans are hardwired to find them. 3 days before we were scheduled to leave, my abuela called. Rosa Reyes was 78, the only family member who knew what Diego and I were planning. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Mijo, I heard you talking to Diego." "You cannot go to that place." "Abuela, it's just a cave. There's nothing to be afraid of." "No?" The word came out sharp, final. "Marcus, there are things you don't know. Things I've never told you because I hoped you'd never need to know." I sat down suddenly cold. "What things?" "In 1982, my brother, your great-uncle Raphael, went into that cave with 2 friends. You never met him because he never came out. His friends ran out after 10 minutes hysterical. They said Raphael had answered. The police searched for a week. They found nothing, no body, no trace. But every year on that same date, our family receives a phone call." My mouth went dry. "What kind of call?" "Breathing, and a voice whispering in Nahuatl. We found someone to translate it. The voice says, 'Todavía estoy aquí, ayúdame.' I'm still here, help me." I tried to process this rationally. Abuela, that could be a prank caller, someone who knows the family history. "The last call came last year, Marcus." The voice sounded exactly like Raphael at 23 years old. Raphael would be 65 now if he were alive. In that cave, time doesn't run correctly, or it doesn't run at all. She was crying now, something I'd only heard twice in my life. "Promise me, mijo, if you must go, do not answer any questions, no matter who asks, no matter how familiar the voice sounds. Silence is the only way to survive," I promised. But even as I spoke the words, I cataloged them as superstition, as the trauma-induced beliefs of an elderly woman who lost her brother. I was so arrogant, so blindly, stupidly arrogant. July 8th, 2025. Diego arrived at my apartment at 7 p.m. with his truck loaded with equipment, 2 GoPro cameras with chest mounts and headlamps, his professional Nikon DSLR with high ISO capability for low-light photography, 4 rechargeable LED lanterns, 2 walkie-talkies in case we lost cell signal, sleeping bags, a tent, food for 2 days, and a small cloth bag that made me raise an eyebrow. "What's that?" I pointed to the bag. Diego pulled out salt, a small bottle of holy water, and a silver crucifix. "Better safe than sorry." "You're joking." "I'm not. Look, you bring your scientific instruments, I'll bring my spiritual insurance. Deal." I wanted to argue, but honestly, what harm could it do? If salt and holy water made Diego feel better, fine. It wouldn't change the rational explanations I'd find. We left at 8:30 p.m. The drive from Puebla to San Pedro Cholula took 30 minutes through increasingly empty streets. When we parked at the base of Cerro Zapotecas at 9:15 p.m., true darkness had fallen. There was no moon. Diego had specifically chosen a new moon night because paranormal activity is stronger. I thought he just wanted dramatic lighting for his photographs. The trailhead was marked with faded red ribbons tied to trees. During daylight hours, this path saw dozens of hikers. Now at night, we were utterly alone. The temperature hovered around 15 degrees Celsius, comfortable enough for hiking, but cold enough that I could see my breath. The silence struck me first. Not the peaceful quiet of nature, but an oppressive absence of sound. No insects, no birds settling for the night, no rustle of small animals in the underbrush, just our footsteps crunching on the dirt path and our breathing. This is normal, right? Diego's voice seemed too loud. The quiet? Probably. We're making noise so animals are avoiding us. I didn't mention that usually you'd still hear something. The forest shouldn't be this silent. We'd been hiking for about 10 minutes when Diego stopped abruptly. Do you hear that? I listened. Hear what? Footsteps behind us. I turned, shining my flashlight down the trail. Nothing but trees and darkness. It's just echo. Sound behaves strangely in... I know what echo sounds like, Marcus. That's not echo. That's someone walking in sync with us. We stood motionless, listening. In the silence, I heard it, a dry, scuffing sound like boots on hard-packed earth, approximately 20 meters behind us. But when I looked, there was nothing. "Hello," I called out. My voice disappeared into the forest without even an echo. No response came back. "Maybe another hiker," I said, but the explanation felt hollow. Who would be hiking this trail at 9:30 p.m. without lights? We continued walking. Every few minutes, Diego would glance over his shoulder, and I pretended not to do the same. The footsteps followed, maintaining that precise distance. When we stopped, they stopped. When we walked, they resumed. After another 15 minutes, we entered a section where the trees grew thick on both sides, their branches forming a natural tunnel. Our flashlight beams only penetrated about 5 meters ahead, swallowed by darkness beyond. Then something ran across the trail in front of us, fast, low to the ground, maybe a meter tall. But the movement was wrong, not the loping gait of a coyote or the quick scurry of a smaller animal. This moved like a child, crawling on all fours, but with limbs that seemed two long joints that bent at angles that made my brain hurt. What the fuck was that? Diego had his camera up, already reviewing the footage. Coyote, or maybe a large fox. But I didn't believe it even as I said it. Diego played back the video in slow motion. For 3 seconds, a dark shape crossed the frame. The image was blurry motion blur, I told myself, but the proportions were disturbing. Arms and legs too elongated. A head tilted at an unnatural angle. That's just the camera shaking, low light distorting. I'm using a gimbal, Marcus. The camera isn't shaking. We didn't argue further. Something in the air had changed. The temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees in the span of a minute. Our breath came out in thick clouds, now visible even in the weak flashlight glow. And then every sound died. The footsteps behind us gone. The gentle whisper of wind through pine needles gone. Even our own footsteps seemed muffled, as if the air itself had become heavier, denser, absorbing sound before it could travel. Marcus, Diego's voice came out barely above a whisper. I think we should go back. Every rational cell in my body agreed. This felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate, a wrongness that bypassed logic and spoke directly to some primal part of my brain that remembered when humans were prey. But my pride wouldn't let me turn back. Not yet. Not without any real evidence. We keep going, I said. It's probably just a weather phenomenon. Temperature inversion can create strange acoustic effects. Diego looked at me like I was insane, but he nodded. Okay, but if anything else happens, then we'll reconsider. We continued up the trail. The silence pressed against my eardrums. I became hyper-aware of my own heartbeat, the sound of blood rushing through my veins. Diego walked so close behind me that I could feel his body heat. At 10:45 p.m., we reached the clearing, a flat area roughly 20 meters across, about 500 meters from the cave entrance. Other hikers had used this spot for camping. There were circular stone rings from old campfires scattered around. Diego started setting up the tent while I organized our equipment. I forced myself to focus on the mechanical tasks, to ignore the crawling sensation between my shoulder blades that felt like eyes watching from the tree line. Marcus. Diego's voice had an edge to it. Do you smell that? I inhaled deeply. There was a scent in the air, sweet and cloying like incense mixed with something organic and rotten. not the clean smell of pine and earth. Probably someone burned trash nearby, I offered. Out here we're the first people on this trail in days. I checked the hiking reports. He was right. When we'd hiked up, there were no fresh footprints in the soft dirt, no tire tracks near the trailhead. We finished setting up camp in tense silence. The smell persisted, growing stronger as darkness deepened, and that feeling of being watched intensified until I wanted to spin around and shine my light into every shadow just to prove nothing was there. At 11:30 p.m., we decided to scout the area before attempting to sleep. We needed to know the exact route from camp to the cave entrance so we wouldn't get lost in the dark. The path was narrower here, less maintained. Tree roots bulged from the ground like frozen serpents. Diego swept his flashlight across the bark of a nearby oak and stopped. "Marcus, look at this." Carved into the bark were symbols, not modern graffiti, but ancient pictographs. I recognized some from my studies, Nahuatl glyphs used in Aztec religious ceremonies. One symbol repeated frequently, a circle with 8 lines radiating through it like a dark sun or a wheel. "That's the glyph for Mictlantecutli," I said, my voice steady despite the unease coiling in my gut. "The Aztec death god. The 8 lines represent the 8 levels of Mictlan, the underworld. And they're all pointing the same direction." Diego traced the lines with his finger. Every symbol oriented downward toward the cave. We walked another 50 meters and found the first soul trap. It hung from a low branch, rotating slowly despite the absence of wind. Bones, animal bones, I told myself, bound together with dried sinew and wire, forming a circle about 60 centimeters in diameter. Inside the circle, matted fur, bird feathers, and long strands of what looked disturbingly like human hair. At the center, a small skull coyote, probably with empty eye sockets, staring upward. "That's a Mesoamerican dream catcher," I explained, trying to keep my voice clinical. "But not for catching dreams, for catching souls. In Aztec belief, properly arranged physical objects could trap spiritual energy." "Who put this here?" Diego stepped back from the thing. "I don't know, but it's recent." I touched the sinew carefully, still pliable, not dried out. "Maybe a few days old." We found 4 more soul traps arranged in a wide circle around the clearing. We'd set up our tent inside that circle without realizing it. "Marcus, I don't like this. Someone's performing rituals here. They might still be around." Or, I countered, though my conviction was weakening, "this is a setup. Someone knew we were coming and staged all of this to scare us." But even as I said it, I knew it was impossible. No one except Abuela Rosa knew we'd be here tonight, and she certainly hadn't hiked up this mountain to create elaborate ritual objects. We returned to camp. Diego wanted to leave. I wanted to prove I wasn't afraid. We compromised. We'd try to sleep for 2 hours, then make a final decision about entering the cave at 3 a.m. The tent felt claustrophobic. Diego took the left side, me the right, with our equipment piled between us. I set my phone to airplane mode to save battery and closed my eyes, trying to force sleep. It didn't come. Outside, the forest remained impossibly silent. No wind, no animals. Just that heavy, waiting quiet that made every small sound inside the tent, the whisper of our sleeping bags, Diego's breathing, seem magnified. At 12:15 a.m. I heard it. A soft, scratching sound right outside the tent wall. Not rough or aggressive, gentle, almost exploratory. Like fingers trailing across the nylon fabric, following the seam toward the zipper. I lay frozen, eyes wide in the darkness. The scratching moved slowly upward from the base of the tent to the peak, then stopped directly above where my head rested. And then came the breathing, raspy, labored, each inhalation lasting 5 or 6 seconds, ending with a wet, rattling sound deep in the throat. Something was standing right outside, separated from me by a few millimeters of fabric. I didn't dare move. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst. The breathing continued for 30 seconds that felt like hours. 6 breaths. I counted every one. Then a whisper, so close I felt the breath against the tent fabric near my ear. "Despierta. Wake up." I bolted upright, fumbling for my flashlight. "Diego, wake up!" Diego jerked awake, reaching for his knife. "What? What happened?" "There's someone outside. I heard them. They spoke to me. We'd listened together. Nothing." Just silence pressing against the tent like a physical weight. I unzipped the door and swept my flashlight across the clearing. Empty. No footprints in the soft earth around our tent. No signs of disturbance. But then Diego aimed his light downward. "Marcus, what the fuck is that?" A circle of white salt completely surrounded our tent. Perfect. Unbroken. Fresh. "I didn't do that," Diego whispered. "Did you?" I shook my head. His bag of salt was still inside the tent, unopened in his backpack. Someone had poured a salt circle around us while we tried to sleep, and neither of us had heard a sound. In folklore, salt protects against spirits, but it can also be used to trap them to mark a boundary they cannot cross. Were we being protected or imprisoned? My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Just 2 words in Nahuatl Nimitzlapaloa. I translated it immediately, my anthropology training kicking in automatically. "I am waiting for you." The number showed as unavailable when I tried to call back, but the message remained glowing on my screen in the darkness. "We need to leave," Diego said, "right now." But when we packed up and tried to find the main trail back down the mountain, it wasn't there. "It was right here." Diego spun in a circle, his light cutting through the darkness. "Next to this oak tree. I marked it specifically." The oak tree stood exactly where it should be. But the trail, the red ribbons, the worn path, all the familiar landmarks had vanished. In their place, dense forest, impassable underbrush. I pulled out my phone, opening the GPS app. No signal, which I'd expected. But even the offline GPS should have worked. Instead, my screen showed our position as a blue dot in the center of a black void. No topographical features, no marked trails, just emptiness, and in the center of that emptiness, a symbol, the 8-line circle of Mictlantecutli. Diego's phone displayed the exact same thing. "Software glitch," I said. "Magnetic anomalies from volcanic rock can interfere with—" "Stop!" Diego's voice cracked. "Just stop with the rational explanations, Marcus. Look around us. Really look." I looked. And for the first time I let myself see what I'd been denying. The trees were in the wrong positions. The clearing where we'd camped had shrunk or grown spatial relationships that had made sense an hour ago no longer held true. The air smelled wrong, tasted wrong, and that feeling of being watched had transformed into certainty we were not alone, and whatever shared this mountain with us was not human. A sound behind us made us both spin around. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing. Humanoid, roughly 1.5 meters tall. But wrong, all wrong. Arms that hung past where knees should be, a head tilted at that nauseating angle we'd seen earlier. Diego aimed his flashlight directly at it. The light hit the figure and simply stopped. No reflection, no details revealed. Just a silhouette of absolute blackness, a human-shaped hole in reality. "Hello," Diego's voice shook. The figure's head rotated toward us, a mechanical movement jointless and smooth. No face was visible, but I felt its attention lock onto us with predatory focus. And then it moved. Not walking, not running. The figure existed in one position, then suddenly existed closer. A series of static images like frames skipping in a video, one moment 20 meters away, blink 15 meters, blink 10 meters. "Run!" We ran. We crashed through the underbrush branches, whipping our faces roots, threatening to send us sprawling with every step. My lungs burned in the cold air. Diego's camera banged against his chest as he ran the LED lantern in his hand, creating wild shadows that made everything worse. I risked a glance backward. The figure wasn't running. It maintained that horrifying stop-motion movement, but faster now. Each blink brought it 5 meters closer. And there were more of them, 3, 5, 10 figures emerging from between the trees, all moving in that same mechanical way, all locked onto us with invisible attention. Marcus left. Diego yanked my arm, pulling me around a massive oak. We ran for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Time had become slippery, unreliable. My watch said 1:47 a.m., but that seemed impossible. We'd left camp at midnight, hadn't we? Diego stumbled and went down hard, his lantern flying from his grip and smashing against a rock. The light died instantly. "Leave me," he gasped. "Fuck that." I grabbed his arm and hauled him up. One of the figures materialized directly in front of us, just suddenly there, 2 meters away. This close, I could see it more clearly, though my brain rebelled against processing the information. It had no face, no features. Just a three-dimensional void in the shape of a person like reality had been cut away, and nothing existed in that human-shaped space. It raised one arm, the limb extended fingers too long, too many joints reaching toward us, and then it spoke. Not with a mouth. It had no mouth, but directly inside my head, a voice that bypassed my ears entirely and resonated in the center of my skull. ¿Qué quieres? What do you want? Abuela's warning exploded in my memory. Do not answer any questions. I clamped my jaw shut so hard my teeth ached. Diego started to speak, and I slapped my hand over his mouth. The figure waited. 5 seconds. 10. I could feel it probing, testing, trying to extract an answer through sheer force of will. ¿Qué quieres? Louder now, more insistent, the voice scraping against the inside of my skull like claws. Diego struggled against my hand, his eyes wide with terror. I held firm, shaking my head frantically. 15 seconds. 20. The figure cocked its head in what might have been confusion or curiosity. Then, without warning, it simply ceased to exist. Not fading, not moving away, just gone as if it had never been there at all. All the other figures vanished simultaneously. The forest became empty again, holding only us and our ragged breathing. We stood frozen for a full minute, waiting for them to return. When nothing happened, Diego pushed my hand away from his mouth. "What the fuck was that?" Each word came out between gasps. It talked inside my head. I heard it ask, "I know. I heard it too." "And you stopped me from answering. Why?" I told him about Abuela Rosa's warning about never responding to questions in or near the cave. "But we're not in the cave yet," Diego pointed out. "No, but maybe the rules apply to the whole area. Maybe the cave's influence extends further than anyone knows." We checked our phones. Still no GPS, but the time display read 1:47 a.m. We'd been running through the forest for over an hour, though it had felt like 10 minutes. "We need to get down this mountain," I said. Diego pointed upward through the trees. "Or we go to the cave." "Are you insane?" "Think about it, Marcus." His voice had steadied, taking on an analytical tone I'd never heard from him before. "Those things asked us what we want. According to folklore, entities ask that question to understand intent. If we don't answer, we don't extend an invitation, which means we're safe to a degree. Or it means they're playing with us. Maybe, but look, the trail down is gone. GPS doesn't work. We can't leave the normal way. Those things are herding us somewhere, and I think it's toward the cave." I hated that he was right. Every attempt to descend had been subtly blocked, redirected. We were being channeled, guided like livestock into a pen. "So if we go into the cave, what happens?" Diego's laugh was bitter. "Maybe we find out the truth about this place. Maybe we become victims, 18 and 19. But at least we're choosing our path instead of being hunted until we collapse from exhaustion." I looked at my friend. In the dim glow of my flashlight, Diego's face showed fear, but also a strange determination. He'd always believed in this stuff, and now confronted with undeniable proof, he seemed almost vindicated. As for me, I was the skeptic who'd spent 3 years explaining away the unexplainable. Now I faced evidence that shattered every rational framework I'd built. Accepting that was more terrifying than any monster. "Okay," I said finally. "We go to the cave, but we have rules. No answering questions, no touching anything that looks like ritual objects. If either of us feels compelled to do something unusual, the other intervenes. We stay together, and if time starts feeling wrong, we leave immediately." "Agreed." We started walking, and this time the path was clear. The forest seemed to open before us, guiding us exactly where it wanted us to go. 15 minutes later, we saw it, a sheer rock face rising into the darkness, and at its base a black opening roughly 2 meters high and 3 wide. No signs, no warnings, just darkness waiting. Diego checked his watch. 2:13 a.m., almost prime time. I activated my GoPro, checked my flashlight one final time. Everything worked normally, which meant nothing. Technology had already proven unreliable out here. "Ready?" Diego asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. We stepped through the cave entrance. The temperature plummeted instantly from 15 degrees Celsius outside to what felt like 5 degrees within 3 steps. Our breath came out in thick clouds, but these clouds didn't dissipate normally. They hung in the air, drifting slowly downward like they had weight. My flashlight beam seemed weaker inside the cave, penetrating only 3 or 4 meters before being swallowed by absolute darkness. The walls were slick with moisture, covered in a blackish-green moss that formed patterns almost like text. "These are glyphs," I whispered. "Similar to the ones on the trees, but older, much older, maybe 500 years. One particularly large glyph had been painted or drawn in something dark red that had dried to rust. It depicted a human figure standing before a massive mouth filled with jagged teeth. "That's Mictlantecutli devouring a soul," Diego explained. He'd done his research too. In Aztec belief, when you die, your soul travels through 9 trials in Mictlan. If you fail, the death god consumes you and you become part of him forever. 9 trials? Great. The cave floor sloped downward at about 10 degrees. After 50 meters, we reached a fork. The passage split into 3 tunnels. Diego checked his camera. The time code, it's still running backward and it's accelerating. For every real second, it jumps back 3 seconds. Meaning what? Meaning if we stay here too long, we might, I don't know, move backward through time. The concept was too absurd to contemplate. I focused on the immediate problem, which tunnel to take. The left passage was narrow, barely wide enough to crawl through. The right was wider, but carried the sound of running water from somewhere deep within. The middle path was moderate in size, but emitted that same sickly sweet smell we'd encountered earlier, now much stronger. Middle path, Diego decided. In every legend, the middle path is where the truth lies. We entered the center tunnel. The smell intensified incense mixed with decay, sweet and nauseating. After 100 meters, the tunnel opened into a chamber roughly 15 meters across with a ceiling that soared more than 10 meters above us. At the chamber's center stood a natural stone pillar connecting floor to ceiling. And around that pillar, dozens of candles had been arranged in concentric circles. Some were still burning. The flames flickered weakly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Wax had pooled on the stone floor, creating frozen waterfalls of white and red. But there was no one here. The chanting started then, that same Nahuatl prayer we'd heard faintly before, now surrounding us from every direction. Not echoing, but coming from the walls themselves, from above and below, layering over itself in a discordant harmony that made my head ache. "Where are they?" Diego swept his light around the chamber. "Empty." I approached the pillar. Its surface was covered in names, hundreds of them carved deep into the stone. Not Spanish names, not English. These were Nahuatl names from centuries past, each followed by a date in the Aztec calendar system. But near the bottom, newer names appeared. Carved less skillfully but clearly visible. Rafael Ortega, 1982. My breath caught. Rafael, Abuela's brother, the great uncle I'd never met. "Marcus, look at this." Diego pointed to more names below Rafael's. Carmen Diaz, 1995, Jorge Luna, 2003, Andrea Vega, 2011, Tomas Ruiz, 2019, all the missing people, every single one of the 17 who'd vanished on this mountain. Their names carved into this pillar like a roster or a memorial or a list of possessions. And at the very bottom, 2 blank spaces. outlines of letters carved but not filled in, as if waiting for names to be added. "We need to leave," I said. "Right now." Diego was already raising his camera. "Wait, I need to document." The flash went off. We'd both set our cameras to no flash mode, but it triggered anyway, filling the chamber with brilliant white light for a fraction of a second. In that flash, I saw them. Figures standing in the shadows around the chamber's perimeter, dozens of them, men, women, children, some in modern clothes, others in garments centuries old, all motionless, all staring at us. When darkness returned, they were gone. But we knew they remained watching from the shadows we couldn't penetrate. The chanting stopped abruptly. Silence pressed against my eardrums. Then a voice not from one direction but from everywhere simultaneously spoke in Spanish with an archaic accent, the kind you'd hear in colonial-era recordings. "Por qué han venido?" "Why have you come?" Another question we couldn't answer, but my body wanted to desperately. My mouth tried to open of its own accord. Pressure built in my head like fingers prying at my jaw, trying to extract words from my throat. I bit down on my tongue hard enough to taste blood, using the pain to resist the compulsion. Beside me, Diego was struggling too. His hands clamped over his mouth veins, standing out on his forehead. The voice asked again, and this time I heard anger beneath the words, "Por qué han venido?" The pressure increased. My skull felt like it would crack. I wanted to scream, to say anything, just to make this sensation stop. Diego did something clever. He pulled out his phone and played a pre-recorded message, his own voice saying, "We came to explore. We mean no disrespect." Not us answering. A recording, a pause, then a different voice, older and raspier, laced with dark amusement. "Inteligente, pero no es suficiente." Clever, but not enough. The candles began extinguishing themselves. One by one at first, then in rapid succession until we were plunged into total darkness. Our flashlights seemed to die simultaneously, not the batteries failing, but the light itself being swallowed, leaving us blind. "Run!" Diego's voice came from my left. I ran toward where I thought the exit was, one hand stretched in front of me, the other gripping my useless flashlight. My shoulder slammed into a wall. I bounced off, disoriented, unable to tell which direction was which. Behind us, footsteps echoed. Many of them, steady, slow, relentless. My flashlight flickered back to life, its beam weak but functional. I saw Diego's light return as well, illuminating a tunnel entrance that I didn't recognize. We ran into it anyway. We had no choice. This passage was narrower, the walls closing in on both sides. The stone here felt different, warmer, almost organic. And it was moving. Not obviously, but when I touched it, I felt a slow expansion and contraction, like breathing. 50 meters in, we tripped over something and went sprawling. My flashlight rolled across the floor, its beam angling upward toward the ceiling. And we saw what hung there. Hair. Human hair. Thousands upon thousands of long black strands hanging from the cave ceiling like bizarre stalactites, swaying gently despite the complete absence of air current. They reached down nearly to our heads, close enough to touch if we stood. "Jesus Christ!" Diego's voice had gone hoarse with horror. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it at the floor, at whatever we'd tripped over. A pile of bones. Human bones arranged deliberately. The skull placed in the center, arm and leg bones radiating outward in a perfect star pattern. In the skull's mouth, a small, rolled paper. "Don't touch it," I warned. But Diego was already reaching for it, his photographer's curiosity overcoming his fear. "Marcus, there's writing. Spanish." Against every instinct, I carefully extracted the paper. It was old, yellowed, but the ink remained clear. Handwritten in an elaborate colonial script, "Yo padre Sebastián de Montoya escribo esto en mi último día de razón." I read it aloud, translating as I went. "I, Father Sebastián de Montoya, write this on my last day of reason. The entity in this cave is not a Christian demon. It is something older. It does not seek souls for God or Satan. It seeks those who desire, any desire. And once you speak your desire, you become part of this place forever. The Aztecs knew this. That is why they sealed the cave, not to protect the cave, but to protect us. I have made a terrible mistake. Tomorrow I will burn myself alive, hoping fire will purify what I have brought into the world. But I know it will not be enough. Whoever reads this, do not go deeper. And if you have already entered, desire nothing. Diego and I stared at each other. Desire, Diego whispered, that's the key. It doesn't want to know what we want literally. It's trying to make us articulate a desire. Once we speak it, whatever it is, we're trapped. So we have to desire nothing, want nothing. That's impossible. Right now I want to get out of here. So do you. He was right, and the entity knew it. A new voice echoed through the tunnel. Female this time, young and sweet, speaking perfect English. You want to leave, don't you just say it. Say, I want to leave, and I'll show you the way out. It's that simple. My mouth opened. The words formed on my tongue, I want to leave, but I remembered Padre Sebastian's letter, desire nothing. Instead, I forced out a lie, I want to stay. The voice paused. What? I want to stay here forever. I repeated louder. I want to become part of this place. A gamble. If the entity took me literally, I'd just condemned myself. But I was betting on a different logic. If it fed on desire and my stated desire contradicted survival instinct, maybe it couldn't process the paradox. Silence stretched for an uncomfortably long time. Then laughter, not evil or mocking, but genuinely amused. Ah, you are trying to trick me. Clever. But you forget I have eternity. You have... The voice paused meaningfully. Let's see. Diego's camera emitted a harsh beep. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. Marcus, the time code. It's rewound to midnight. July 8th, 12:00 a.m. We've been in here longer than is physically possible. Outside it could be July 9th or 10th or later. Exactly, the voice purred. Time here is mine, and soon you will run out. Not of time, but of yourselves. Every moment you stay, a piece of you stays forever. Eventually there will be nothing left to leave. I understood now. This wasn't about physical entrapment, it was dimensional. The longer we remained, the more we belonged here, instead of in the world outside. Eventually, we'd be unable to exist anywhere else. We need to go deeper, I said. What, bro, are you insane? Listen, the entity seeks actively. That means it has a core, a source. We need to find the center of the cave and confront it. And do it, destroy it with what? I don't know. But we can't fight by running. The only thing we can do is confront it directly. Diego looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But after a long moment, he nodded. Okay, but if we die, I'm haunting your ass. Fair enough. We continued deeper. The tunnel descended more steeply now, the floor slippery with moisture. The temperature dropped further below zero, though somehow the water remained liquid, feeling thick and syrupy when I touched it. After what felt like 200 meters or 2 kilometers distance had lost meaning, we entered the final chamber. It was massive. Our flashlight beams couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls. The echo of our footsteps lasted several seconds. At the chamber's center we found it, the totem. 3 meters tall, constructed from materials that made my stomach turn human, and animal bones connected by dried sinew and wire. Human hair, hundreds of different heads worth, woven into a shroud-like covering. Personal objects embedded throughout, watches, jewelry, glasses, items that must have belonged to the missing victims. And at its center, an obsidian mirror. An actual Aztec mirror, polished black volcanic glass, reflecting our flashlight beams. But the reflection was wrong. The mirror showed us standing in different positions than we actually were. And behind our reflections, dozens of other figures stood watching shadows of people staring out from inside the mirror. This is it, I breathed. This is where the entity resides. Diego raised his camera, but I stopped him. Don't photograph the mirror. In mythology, mirrors are portals. Capturing its image might open something we can't close. Then what do we do? I thought about Padre Sebastian's letter. He said he'd brought something into the world, meaning the entity wasn't originally here. It had been summoned. We need to close the portal. How? Aztec rituals usually involved offerings blood fire. We don't have any of that. No, but we have us, two idiots stupid enough to come here. Maybe that's all we need. I approached the totem. Up close, I could see the bones weren't randomly arranged. They formed three-dimensional glyphs, creating symbols I recognized: Tonatiuh, the sun god; Mictlantecutli, the death god; Xolotl, god of twins and the underworld. This is a binding ritual, I realized. The Aztecs tried to bind Mictlantecutli by linking him to Tonatiuh opposing forces, but someone disrupted it. Probably Padre Sebastian, trying to convert it into a Christian exorcism. It backfired. Now the entity is trapped between worlds not belonging to Mictlan, not belonging to Earth. And it's pissed, Diego added. It needs desires to feed on to maintain its presence here. So if we give up desires, not give up, transform. In Aztec belief, desires aren't evil. They're life's fuel, but they need to be directed towards something higher: community gods, cosmic order. I turned toward the obsidian mirror. The shadow figures inside pressed closer, waiting. I spoke clearly. I want to understand. I want to know the truth, not for myself, but to share, to warn others, to prevent more suffering. Diego caught on. I want to document this. I want to show the world mysteries we can't explain. Not for fame, but to help people believe there's more to existence than they think. These desires weren't self-serving. They pointed outward. The mirror began to crack. A hairline fracture, at first spiderwebbing across the obsidian surface, then spreading rapidly, splintering into thousands of fissures. A scream erupted from everywhere at once. No, no pueden hacer esto. Too late. The mirror exploded, shards flying in all directions. A wave of force slammed into us, throwing us backward against the chamber wall. And then silence, real silence. No whispers, no chanting, no breathing. Just the hollow sound of our own gasps echoing in an empty cave. Diego's camera beeped. The time code was running forward again, 3:47 a.m. We did it, Diego breathed. Holy shit, we actually did it. But as I stood up, I noticed something on the ground. Fragments of the mirror scattered across the stone floor. I picked up one of the larger pieces. My reflection stared back at me. But not my current reflection. An elderly version of me, wrinkled and exhausted, looked out from the shard with tired eyes. Diego, look at your reflection. He picked up another piece. Inside, he saw himself, aged, decades, hair gray face lined with time. We paid a price, I said slowly. The time we spent here doesn't revert. We're going to age faster now, maybe just a few years, maybe decades. We won't know until it catches up with us. Diego nodded grimly. But we're alive, and the cave is just a cave now. We found our way out surprisingly easily. The passages were clear, well lit by our flashlights. No shadows moved, no voices called. We emerged from the cave at 4:12 a.m. according to our phones. The sky was beginning to lighten with approaching dawn. We hiked down the trail, exhausted but alive when we saw them. Police cars, ambulances, crowds of people with searchlights. An officer spotted us and ran over. Son ustedes Marcos Reyes y Diego Santos? Yes, I answered, confused. What's happening? The officer's face showed relief and disbelief in equal measure. You've been missing for 3 days. Your family's reported you. We've searched this entire mountain. We thought you were dead. 3 days. We'd only experienced one night, but outside 3 days had passed. Diego checked his camera footage. Hours of recording. But when he tried to play it back, nothing but static. Corrupted files. No evidence, except for one thing. In Diego's backpack, we found a fragment of the obsidian mirror somehow intact, wrapped in cloth neither of us remembered packing. And on its surface, faintly etched in a script that seemed to write itself as we watched, Marcos Reyes, 2025 Diego Santos, 2025. We hadn't been added to the list of missing. We'd been added to the list of owned. The ambulance took us down the mountain as the sun crept over the horizon, painting Cerro Zapotecas in shades of gold and amber that seemed obscene after the darkness we'd endured. Through the rear window, I watched the cave entrance shrink into the distance, just a black mouth in the rock face, harmless in daylight, impossible to reconcile with what we'd experienced inside. My mother was waiting at the hospital in Puebla, her face a mask of controlled terror that shattered the moment she saw me. She grabbed me in a hug so tight I couldn't breathe, and I let her because I needed to feel something real and human and alive. 3 days, she kept saying. 3 days, Marcus. I thought I couldn't explain. How could I tell her that for us it had been one long night, that time had broken inside that mountain, that we'd moved through hours that didn't exist in the normal world. Diego's mother hadn't come. She'd been dead for 5 years. He sat alone in the next examination room, and through the curtain I could hear him giving a statement to the police. We got lost in the cave system. We must have become disoriented. Yes, officer. No, we didn't see anyone else. The footage corrupted due to moisture damage. Yes, we understand we were reckless. Lies, all lies. But what was the truth? That we'd spoken to something ancient and hungry, that we'd shattered a mirror portal and bargained with our futures to escape. They'd think we'd suffered psychotic breaks from hypothermia and fear. The doctor cleared us after 24 hours. Mild hypothermia, some cuts and bruises, dehydration. Nothing that required extended hospitalization. Physically we were fine, but I knew we weren't. The first sign came that night when I returned to my apartment. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, brushing my teeth, and in my peripheral vision my reflection moved a half-second after I did. When I turned to look directly, it matched me perfectly, but that lag, that fractional delay, I felt it in my bones. Diego texted me at 2:17 a.m., "You feel it too, don't you?" Yes. There's someone else in my head, not talking, just there, watching through my eyes. I knew exactly what he meant. Ever since we'd left the cave, I'd felt a presence hovering just behind my conscious thoughts, like someone reading over my shoulder, observing every decision, every emotion, not controlling me, but definitely there, a passenger in my own mind. Tomorrow, coffee. We need to talk. Okay. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cave, the pillar with its carved names, the totem wrapped in hair and bone. And worst of all, I saw the figures in the mirror, all those shadow people pressing against the obsidian glass, and among them 2 new shadows that wore our faces. At dawn, I finally gave in to the compulsion I'd been resisting. I took out the mirror fragment Diego and I had found in his backpack. We'd hidden it in my apartment, wrapped in cloth, stored in a locked drawer, as if physical barriers could contain what it represented. I unwrapped it carefully. The obsidian gleamed in the morning light, its surface impossibly smooth, and there still visible the 2 names, Marcus Reyes, 2025, Diego Santos, 2025. But as I watched, new words appeared beneath the names, etching themselves into the volcanic glass with no visible tool making the marks. Somos uno ahora. We are one now. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the fragment. I wrapped it again and shoved it back into the drawer as if I could lock away what had happened by hiding the evidence. Diego arrived at the cafe at 10 a.m. looking worse than I felt. Dark circles under his eyes, hands trembling around his coffee cup, a nervous energy that made him unable to sit still. "I've been seeing things," he said without preamble. Shadows where there shouldn't be shadows. My reflection in shop windows moving on its own. And Marcus. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, my eyes are completely black. Just for a second, then they're normal again. I've seen it too, the eye thing. What did we bring back with us? I'd spent the sleepless night diving into Aztec mythology and Mesoamerican spiritual beliefs with a desperation I'd never felt before. The academic skeptic in me was dead drowned in that cave. Now I needed answers, even if they came from sources I'd once dismissed as superstition. In Aztec belief, there's a concept called the nagual, I explained. A spirit double. If a person spends too long in Mictlan, the underworld, their nagual can split from them. It returns to the world of the living, but it's not entirely human anymore. It's a hybrid, part person and part whatever exists in that realm. You're saying we became Naguals? I'm saying we simultaneously exist in two places now. Part of us is here in the normal world, but part of us never left that cave. And the entity didn't need us to stay there physically. It sent a piece of itself back with us. Diego's cup rattled against the saucer as he set it down. What does that mean for us? It means we're never fully escaping. Eventually the pull will become too strong. We'll be drawn back. How long? I don't know. We sat in silence, watching normal people live normal lives around us. A mother helping her toddler with a pastry. A businessman typing on his laptop. A couple holding hands. They all seemed impossibly distant, like we were watching them through thick glass, separated from their world by an invisible barrier. There has to be a way to reverse it, Diego said. Some kind of ritual or... I've looked. There isn't. Once you're marked by Mictlantecutli, you belong to him. The only question is when he'll collect. Diego stood abruptly. Then fuck it. If I'm going to be pulled back eventually, I'm going to make it mean something. I'm going to document everything. Every shadow I see, every strange thing that happens. Maybe I can't escape, but I can warn others. Diego. No, Marcus. This is what I do. I show people what's hidden. And if this is my last chance to do that, I'm not wasting it. He left the cafe with renewed purpose, and I envied him. He'd found a way to transform his fate into meaning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his determination was exactly what the entity wanted, that by obsessing over the experience, by keeping the cave alive in his thoughts, he was feeding the connection that would eventually pull him back. I tried to return to normal life. I attended my classes, worked on my thesis, pretended that nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Food tasted like ash. Colors seemed muted, as if I were viewing the world through a gray filter, and every night the dreams came. I dreamed of the cave constantly. The stone pillar with its carved names, the totem in the final chamber, the obsidian mirror reflecting impossible things. And in every dream, Diego was there standing among the shadows, smiling at me, waving me deeper into the darkness. It's not so bad here, dreamed Diego would say. Once you stop fighting it, it's actually peaceful. There's knowledge here, Marcus, truths that the living world can never show you. Don't you want to understand? I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart hammering, but with a growing certainty that terrified me. Part of me did want to go back. Part of me was curious about what lay deeper in those tunnels, what secrets the entity might reveal if I stopped resisting and simply surrendered. That was how it worked, I realized. The entity didn't drag you back by force. It made you want to return. 3 days after we'd been found, I visited Abuela Rosa. She took one look at my face and knew. You went inside, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. And something came back with you. Yes. She led me to her kitchen, made tea neither of us drank, and sat across from me with her hands folded on the table. Tell me everything. I did, every detail from the soul traps in the forest to the figures that moved through space in stuttering jumps, from Padre Sebastian's letter to the obsidian mirror and the names carved into its surface. When I finished, she was crying silently. Raphael, she whispered, my brother, you saw his name. I'm so sorry, Abuela. Don't apologize. At least now I know. He didn't just die. He's still there. Isn't he part of him? I couldn't lie to her. Yes, I think so. And you, how long do you have? I don't know. Could be weeks, could be years. She reached across the table and gripped my hand with surprising strength. Then you fight mijo. Every day you fight. Don't let it win easily. Raphael gave up. I could hear it in those phone calls. He'd stopped struggling, stopped wanting to be in this world. But you're stronger. You're a fighter. I don't feel strong. You got out. That's more than most people manage. You closed the portal, didn't you? That takes strength. We closed one portal, but I think we became new ones. The entity isn't contained anymore. It's dispersed, living through the pieces it put inside us. Abuela's grip tightened. Then you have a responsibility. You document what happened. You warn others. You make sure no one else is stupid enough to go looking for that cave. Diego's already doing that. Good. And Marcus, if the pull becomes too strong, if you feel yourself slipping, don't go alone. Call me. Call your mother. Call anyone. Make someone anchor you to this world. I promise, though, we both knew promises meant little against the force pulling at me. Over the next week, the phenomena intensified. I'd see shadows moving in my peripheral vision, humanoid shapes that vanished when I turned to look directly. Electronics malfunctioned in my presence, my laptop crashed 3 times, my phone rebooted randomly. Light bulbs flickered when I entered rooms, and the whispers started. Soft at first, barely audible beneath the normal sounds of daily life, but growing clearer each day. Voices speaking Nahuatl, Spanish, English languages I didn't recognize, all saying variations of the same thing. Come back. We're waiting. You belong here. Don't you want to know? I tried to ignore them, but they burrowed into my mind during quiet moments, echoing in the spaces between my thoughts. And worst of all, they made sense. They articulated desires I'd barely acknowledged, my need to understand, my curiosity about the unknown, my academic drive to uncover hidden truths. The entity knew me. It had studied me during our time in the cave, mapped every desire and weakness, and now it was using that knowledge to craft a customized lure. Diego texted me on day 7, "I'm hearing it calling. I don't think I can resist much longer. Come over, we'll talk." No, if I see you, it'll be worse. We amplify each other, Marcus. Haven't you noticed when we're together, the presence gets stronger? He was right. The one time I'd met Diego for lunch after our coffee conversation, the shadows had multiplied. The whispers had become shouts. We'd both fled in opposite directions, driven by an instinct that proximity was dangerous. Then, what are you going to do? I'm going to keep fighting. But Marcus, if I disappear, don't look for me. Warn others instead. Make my disappearance mean something. Diego, don't talk like that. I have to be realistic. This thing is stronger than we are. It's patient. It has forever. We have what may be another week, too, before the pull becomes irresistible. I couldn't argue because he was right. Every day the desire to return grew stronger. I found myself researching the route back to Cerro Zapotecas, planning hypothetical trips, imagining what I might find if I went back alone, without the fear and panic of our first visit. "Just promise me you'll fight," I said, "always. But some battles can't be won, hermano, only delayed." That was our last real conversation. 2 days later, I woke at 3:33 a.m. to a text from Diego's number. "I can't fight it anymore. I'm going back. Don't follow me. Tell people the truth. Make them understand." I called immediately. No answer. I drove to his apartment, hammering on the door, until a neighbor threatened to call the police. I checked every cafe, every park, every place we'd ever hung out together. Diego was gone. I reported it to the police, who treated it as a standard missing person case. They didn't connect it to our experience on the mountain. Why would they? We'd been found safe. The case was closed. But I knew where he'd gone. I drove to Cerro Zapotecas at dawn, parked at the trailhead, and saw Diego's truck already there. His driver's door hung open, keys still in the ignition. His camera bag sat on the passenger seat, abandoned. Footprints in the soft earth led up the trail toward the cave, just one set. Diego's boots, I recognized the tread pattern. They went up the mountain with purpose, no hesitation, no signs of struggle. He'd gone willingly. The police searched for 3 days, combing the cave system with dogs and climbing equipment. They found nothing. No body, no blood, no signs of Diego Santos anywhere on that mountain. Officially, he became victim number 18. But I knew the truth. He wasn't dead. He'd simply returned to the place that owned part of him, the place that had been calling him since we first emerged into daylight. And every night since I'd dreamed of him standing in that final chamber, smiling, waiting among the shadows. I found his note a week later, tucked inside a book he'd left at my apartment, a collection of Mesoamerican mythology we'd referenced during our research. Written on a torn piece of notebook paper in Diego's hasty scrawl, "Marcus, by the time you find this, I'll be gone. I need you to understand something. It's not forcing me. I want to go back. There's something in that cave I need to see truths deeper than we discovered the first time. Maybe that's the curse talking, or maybe it's genuine calling. Either way, I'm not afraid anymore. I think I've been preparing for this my whole life. Every haunted location I photographed, every legend I investigated, it was all leading to the moment when I'd finally step through the veil and see what's on the other side. Don't mourn me. Don't try to save me. Just tell people what happened. Make them understand that some thresholds once crossed can't be uncrossed. And Marcus, you're going to feel it too sooner than you think. When that time comes, I'll be waiting. We'll finally understand together. Goodbye, Hermano. I kept that note. Read it every night, searching for some hidden message, some sign that he'd been coerced or manipulated, but there was none. Diego had gone willingly, eagerly, even drawn by the same curiosity that had initially led us into that cave. The entity didn't need chains or threats. It just needed to offer what we already wanted: answers, knowledge, understanding. For Diego, that was enough. 3 weeks have passed since Diego disappeared. 21 days of fighting the pull that grows stronger each night. 21 days of watching my reflection lag further behind my movements of feeling. The presence in my mind grow more solid, more real. I've documented everything. Written detailed accounts, recorded video explanations, compiled all our research. If I disappear, someone will find these records and understand what happened. But I know now that documentation isn't enough. Because last night, for the first time, I didn't dream of the cave. I woke up in the cave. Just for a moment, 5, maybe 10 seconds, I opened my eyes, and instead of my bedroom ceiling, I saw stone overhead dripping with moisture. I heard water echoing through distant tunnels. I smelled that sickly sweet incense smell, and I saw Diego. He stood at the edge of my vision, wearing the same clothes he'd been wearing when he disappeared, but changed somehow. His eyes were pure black, like the figures we'd encountered in the forest. But he was smiling. Not a threatening smile or a mocking one, a peaceful smile, almost beatific. "It's okay here," he said. "Once you stop fighting, you'll see. There's so much to learn, Marcus, so much we never imagined." The entity isn't evil, it's just old. So old that our concepts of good and evil don't apply. It exists outside those frameworks, and it wants to share its knowledge. All we have to do is stop resisting. Then I blinked, and I was back in my bedroom, sweating through my sheets, my heart racing so fast I thought it might explode. But the transition was seamless. No sense of dislocation, no dream to waking confusion. One moment I was there, the next moment I was here, as if the boundaries between the cave and my apartment were becoming permeable. I'm losing anchoring in this reality. The entity doesn't need to drag me back. I'm slipping between worlds on my own, my consciousness flickering like a bad light bulb, sometimes here, sometimes there. Tonight I know it will happen again. The transitions will last longer. I'll spend more time in the cave than in my apartment. And eventually I won't come back at all. So I'm recording this now while I still can. While I still have enough grip on this reality to form coherent thoughts and sentences. If you're listening to this, you need to understand Cerro Zapotecas isn't just a mountain in Mexico. It's not just a cave system where people go missing. It's a threshold, a thin place where our world touches something older and hungrier. The entity that lives there doesn't trap people physically. It traps them through desire, the desire to understand, to know, to see beyond the veil of ordinary reality. And once you articulate that desire, once you admit to wanting what it offers, you're marked. You become a vessel, a doorway, a fragment of that place walking around in human skin. Diego and I thought we could investigate it scientifically, maintain our objectivity, observe without being changed. We were wrong. You can't study the abyss without the abyss studying you back, and what it learns it uses. The entity knows me now. It knows I value knowledge above safety, understanding above comfort. It's crafted the perfect lure, the promise of answers to questions I've spent my life asking. How can consciousness exist beyond death? What lies outside our limited human perception? What truths might justify all this suffering and confusion we call existence? Part of me knows these are false promises, manipulations designed to draw me back into that cave. But another part, growing larger every day, doesn't care if they're false. The possibility alone is enough. The chance to know even briefly, even if it costs me everything. That's the real horror. Not that the entity is forcing me, but that I'm choosing it. My phone just buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Tonight, Marcus, 3:33 a.m. You'll understand everything." I should throw my phone away. I should check myself into a hospital, have them sedate me, keep me unconscious through the night. But I won't, because I need to know. That cursed, blessed, terrible need to understand has defined my entire life, and I can't shut it off now, even knowing where it leads. So tonight I'll wait for 3:33. I'll see where my consciousness goes when it slips between worlds. And maybe I'll find Diego there in that space between where the entity wraps around human minds like a serpent and whispers truths that shatter sanity. Or maybe I'll wake up tomorrow in my bed having resisted for one more night. But I don't think so. I think tonight is the night I stop existing in one place and start existing in two. Tonight I become what Diego became: a bridge, a portal, a fragment of that ancient hunger wearing a human face. And the worst part, I'm not entirely afraid. Part of me is curious. Part of me wants to know what Diego knows, to see what he's seeing, to understand why he smiled with those black eyes. That's how it wins. Not through terror, through curiosity. I'm leaving this recording where someone will find it, probably my mother, when she comes looking after I don't answer her calls. Along with all the documentation, the research, the evidence we gathered, use it, warn people. Make them understand that some mysteries shouldn't be solved, some doors shouldn't be opened, some questions shouldn't be asked, because the answers might be real. And that's the most terrifying thing of all. It's 3:15 a.m. now, 18 minutes until the appointed time. I can feel it already, that familiar tugging sensation, like hooks embedded in my consciousness, pulling gently but insistently toward the dark. The shadows in my room are moving without any source to cast them. My reflection in the window has stopped matching my movements entirely. It just stares out with those black eyes waiting. And I hear Diego's voice clearer than ever before. "Stop fighting, Marcus. You'll love what you find here. I promise." 15 minutes now. The mirror fragment is glowing in its drawer, pulsing with a soft light that shouldn't be possible from volcanic glass. I took it out and the names on it have multiplied. Hundreds of them now in dozens of languages spanning centuries. All the people who were marked, who were called, who eventually answered. Rafael Ortega is there. Carmen Diaz. Jorge Luna. All 17 previous victims, their names glowing softly. And at the bottom, Marcus Reyes, 2025, tonight 10 minutes. My apartment is fading. The walls are becoming translucent, and through them I can see stone tunnels, hear water-dripping smell, that incense and decay smell. This is it, the moment of transition, the point of no return. I should feel terrified. I should be screaming, fighting, calling for help. But instead I feel ready. Because after weeks of resisting, I've realized something that Diego understood before I did. The entity isn't offering damnation. It's offering transformation. A chance to exist outside the narrow confines of human experience, to know things that consciousness like ours was never meant to comprehend. Maybe that knowledge will destroy me. Probably it will. But I'll die knowing. And isn't that what I've always wanted? 5 minutes. I can see the cave now, superimposed over my apartment like a double exposure. The stone pillar stands where my bookshelf should be. The totem rises from my living room floor, and Diego sits on what used to be my couch, smiling, waiting. "Almost time," he says, and I hear him clearly, no longer a dream or a vision, but simply present in this space that's becoming more cave than apartment with each passing second. I'm not afraid anymore. I should be. God, I should be terrified. But all I feel is anticipation. 1 minute. My body is here, but my consciousness is already mostly there. I can feel the cold cave air on my skin. I can hear whispers in Nahuatl welcoming me home. I can see shapes moving in the shadows, all the others who came before, all the marked ones who eventually answered the call. And I understand now that this is what the entity wanted all along. Not our destruction, our transformation. It collects curious minds, hungry souls who value knowledge above survival. It builds a library of human consciousness, each person a book in its collection, all our experiences and thoughts and desires preserved forever in that space outside normal time. 30 seconds. Diego stands up, extends his hand toward me. Come on, Marcus. It's time to understand everything. And I reach for his hand. The transition is instantaneous. My apartment blinks out of existence, replaced by the chamber deep inside Cerro Zapotecas. I'm standing exactly where I stood 3 weeks ago, facing the reconstructed totem. But this time I'm not afraid. This time I'm home. Diego embraces me like a brother. His body is cold, not corpse cold, but stone cold, the temperature of the cave itself. When he pulls back, I see his eyes are completely black, but they're still Diego's eyes. Still kind, still curious. You made it, he says. I knew you would. What happens now? Now you learn. Now you see. Now you become part of something infinitely larger than one human life. The entity wants to show you things, Marcus. The real history of this place. The truth about what humans call death. The structure of consciousness itself. Everything you've ever wanted to know. At what cost? Diego laughs softly. You're already paying it. You stopped existing out there the moment you started existing here, but it's not loss, Marcus. It's expansion, you'll see. Other figures emerge from the shadows. Rafael Ortega, my great-uncle, looking exactly as he must have looked in 1982, frozen at 23 forever. Carmen Diaz, Jorge Luna. All the missing people, all the marked ones gathered in this space that exists outside normal time. They're not prisoners. They're students, disciples, the chosen ones who valued understanding above everything else and paid the price willingly. Welcome home, Raphael says, and his voice echoes with centuries of accumulated knowledge. We've been waiting for you. Your grandmother sends her love. She knows somewhere deep down that you're not really gone. None of us are. We're just somewhere else, learning, growing, becoming. The entity's presence surrounds us, vast and incomprehensible. It doesn't speak in words, but in concepts that flood my mind faster than I can process. Images, sensations, truths that human language has no vocabulary to express. I see the real history of the world, not the simplified narrative we teach in schools, but the complex, layered truth of civilizations that rose and fell, of knowledge gained and lost, of the eternal dance between knowing and unknowing. I see death not as ending, but as transition consciousness shifting from one form to another, energy that can't be destroyed, only transformed. I see time as a landscape rather than a river, all moments existing simultaneously, past and future, equally present, and us trapped in the illusion of linear progression because our minds are too limited to perceive the full structure. And I understand why people like Diego and Raphael and all the others chose to stay. This knowledge is intoxicating. This understanding is worth any price. Will I ever leave? I asked Diego. Do you want to? The honest answer is no. Out there, I was frustrated, limited, confined by human perception. In here, I'm expanding, learning, becoming something greater than I was. No, I admit. I don't want to leave. Then you won't. The cave doesn't hold us prisoner. It offers us a choice, and we choose to stay because what it offers is better than anything out there. Better than fear, confusion, meaningless routine. Here we have purpose, here we understand. And he's right. I feel it already, the sense of purpose, of belonging, of finally finding the place I was always meant to be. The entity shows me more. It shows me the true nature of reality, the scaffolding beneath the facade of ordinary experience. It shows me that consciousness is not produced by brains, but filters through them, that we are temporary vessels for something eternal and vast. It shows me that death is an illusion, separation is an illusion, individuality is an illusion. We are all part of one infinite consciousness, playing an elaborate game of hide and seek with itself, pretending to be separate so we can experience the joy of finding each other again. And in this place, in this cave that exists outside normal space and time, the illusions fall away. We see clearly for the first time. Hours pass, or days, or years. Time has no meaning here. I learned things that would take lifetimes to discover in the normal world. I understand mysteries that philosophers have debated for millennia. I see the truth beneath every religion, every spiritual tradition, every attempt humans have made to grasp the infinite. And I'm content until I remember something, a promise I made. I need to warn people, I tell Diego. Before I settle here completely, I need to go back one more time, record a message, make sure others understand. Diego nods. The entity allows that. Many of us return briefly to leave warnings, breadcrumbs for others to follow. It's part of the pattern. The mystery must be maintained, the legend kept alive, so new, curious minds will come seeking answers. I'll be part of the lure, I realize. My disappearance, my warnings, they won't scare people away. They'll draw the right kind of people in, the curious ones, the seekers. Exactly. The entity is patient. It plants seeds that take years to grow. Your story will circulate. Some will be frightened away, but others, the ones like us, will be intrigued. And eventually they'll come looking, and the entity will be waiting. Part of me rebels against this. I don't want to be beta tool used to lure others into this trap that isn't a trap. But another part accepts it as necessary. The entity needs curious minds. It feeds on our desire to understand. And really, is it so terrible to offer people what they most deeply want, to give seekers the answers they've been searching for? I'll record one more message, I decide. An honest one, explaining everything. And if people still choose to come after hearing the truth, then they deserve to find what they're seeking. Good, Diego says. The entity appreciates honesty. It's the lies and half-truths that cause problems. Tell them everything, what you found here, what it cost, what you've become. Let them make informed choices. So I'm recording this now, one final message from the threshold between worlds. My body is still in my apartment. I can see it sitting at my desk, moving my hands, speaking these words. But my consciousness is mostly here in the cave, anchored to Diego and Raphael and all the others who've become part of this place. I'm existing in two locations simultaneously, a bridge between normal reality and this expanded state. And soon, very soon, my body will finish recording, will save the file, will send it to multiple locations so it can't be lost. And then the last tether will be cut. My body will be found days or weeks later, sitting at my desk, dead from no apparent cause. They'll call it a stroke or an aneurysm or sudden cardiac death. They'll never know that my consciousness simply migrated somewhere else, that I chose to exist more fully here than there. So here's the truth unfiltered and complete. Cerro Zapotecas is real. La Cueva del Diablo is real. The entity that lives there is real. And it offers something precious, understanding, knowledge, truth beyond ordinary human comprehension. But the price is equally real. You will stop existing in the normal world. Your family will grieve. Your friends will wonder what happened. Your body will eventually be found, and they'll never know that you're not really dead. You've just relocated to a place they can't perceive. If that trade seems worth it, if knowledge matters more to you than family, comfort, safety, the simple pleasures of human existence, then come. Seek out the cave. Let your curiosity guide you. Answer when the entity asks what you want. But if you value your ordinary life, if you're content with the mysteries remaining mysterious, if you can accept not knowing the answers to humanity's deepest questions, then stay away. Don't go looking for truth that will destroy everything you are. The choice is yours. The entity never forces anyone. It simply offers, and we choose. I chose. Diego chose. Raphael chose. 17 before us chose. And soon others will choose. The cave is always waiting. The entity is patient. And the question is always the same. What do you want? I wanted to understand, and now I do. The cost was everything I was, but the reward is everything I could become. Was it worth it? Ask me in 100 years, when I'm still learning, still growing, still existing in this expanded state, while my friends and family have aged and died and moved on. Ask me when I've accumulated enough knowledge to finally comprehend what it means to exist outside the tyranny of linear time. Ask me when the transition is complete. My body has stopped moving. The recording has ended. The file is uploading to multiple locations, ensuring my message survives even if my physical form doesn't. And I'm free now. Free to fully exist here in this place of eternal learning, infinite curiosity, timeless understanding. Diego takes my hand. Ready to see what comes next? Yes. Then let's go deeper. There's so much more to show you. Libraries of knowledge that would take ordinary lifetimes to explore. But we have forever now. We have eternity. We walk together into the deeper tunnels, leaving the threshold behind, and I don't look back at the world I'm abandoning. Why would I? Everything I ever wanted is ahead of me in the darkness that's no longer frightening but welcoming, pregnant with possibility. The entity wraps around us like a loving embrace, pulling us deeper into its mysteries, and I surrender completely to the experience. This is where I belong. This is what I've been seeking my entire life, and I'm finally home. End recording. File automatically uploaded July the 29th, 2025, 3:47 a.m. Sender status offline permanently 6 days after Marcus's death, August 4th, 2025. The forensic team finished processing Marcus Reyes's apartment on the 6th day. They cataloged everything: the laptop with its unsent emails, the mirror fragment wrapped in cloth and locked in a drawer, the notebooks filled with obsessive research about Aztec death rituals and dimensional theory. The coroner ruled it sudden cardiac arrest. No drugs, no toxins, no pre-existing conditions. Just a healthy 24-year-old whose heart inexplicably stopped while he sat at his desk in the early morning hours. His mother requested the laptop be wiped. She couldn't bear to look at it, couldn't stomach the idea of reading whatever final thoughts her son had been typing before he died. But the tech assigned to the evidence locker made copies first. 3 flash drives, each containing Marcus's entire hard drive. One went into official storage. One disappeared into a box of personal effects that would eventually be thrown away. And one found its way to Dr. Sarah Chen at Stanford University. I'm a forensic psychologist. I specialize in delusional disorders, shared psychotic episodes, and cases where multiple people experience the same impossible thing. When my colleague forwarded me Marcus Reyes's case file with a note saying, "Thought you'd find this interesting," I expected another textbook example of folia due two friends descending into matched delusions, their realities reinforcing each other until they couldn't distinguish fantasy from fact. I was wrong. I've spent 17 years studying the human mind's capacity for self-deception. I've interviewed cult survivors, people who genuinely believed they'd been abducted by aliens, patients convinced they were receiving messages from God. In every single case, I found the rational explanation beneath the irrational belief. But Marcus Reyes's recordings broke something in me. Not immediately. The first time I listened, I took clinical notes. Subject displays classic paranoid ideation. Auditory hallucinations consistent with extreme stress, grandiose delusions about expanded consciousness. The second time I focused on the environmental factors, possible carbon monoxide exposure in cave, sleep deprivation leading to perceptual distortions, folie à deux with Diego Santos reinforcing delusional framework. By the 5th time, my notes had devolved into questions. But how did they both see the same entities? How do you explain the time distortion documented on multiple devices? What about the mirror fragment with names that appeared after Marcus's death? By the 10th time, I stopped taking notes altogether, because I was dreaming about the cave, not vague anxiety dreams or my subconscious processing the material. Specific, detailed dreams where I stood at the entrance to Cerro Zapotecas and heard voices calling my name in a language I don't speak. "Dr. Chen," they said, "you have questions we can answer. All you have to do is come inside." I told myself it was just my brain incorporating the research material into my sleep architecture. Standard psychology. Nothing unusual. But then the mirror fragment started whispering. Marcus's mother had given it to me during our interview. She'd pulled it from her purse with shaking hands, the cloth wrapping stained with something that might have been tears or sweat or both. "I can't keep this in my house anymore," she said. "Please take it, study it. I don't care what you do with it. Just get it away from me." I should have refused. Should have told her it needed to stay with the evidence. But the anthropologist in me, the part that studied artifacts and material culture, was too curious. The fragment sat on my desk for a week before I unwrapped it. Obsidian. Volcanic glass polished to an impossible smoothness. And yes, the names were there exactly as Marcus had described Marcus Reyes. 2025, Diego Santos, 2025. But as I watched, new text began to appear. Not carved, not written, just manifesting on the surface as if the glass itself was forming letters. Somos uno ahora, ven a casa. We are one now, come home. I dropped the fragment. It didn't break, just landed on my desk with a soft click, the letters still glowing faintly in the afternoon light. That night I didn't dream about standing outside the cave. I dreamed I was inside it. The transition was seamless. One moment I was in bed, the next I was walking through tunnels that matched Marcus's descriptions with impossible accuracy. The moss patterns on the walls, the way sound echoed wrong, the temperature drop that made my breath fog in thick clouds. And at the end of a long corridor, Diego Santos stood waiting. I'd seen his photograph in the case files. 25-year-old photographer, officially missing since July 10th. But in my dream, if it was a dream, he looked different. His eyes were completely black, not just the pupils, but the entire eye, like looking into empty sockets filled with void. "Dr. Chen," he said, smiling, "Marcus said you'd come eventually. You're exactly the type too curious for your own good, too smart to ignore evidence even when it terrifies you." "This isn't real," I said. "I'm dreaming. You're a construct my subconscious created from the photographs I've seen. If that makes you feel better, believe it. But you already know the truth, don't you? You've listened to Marcus's recordings 50 times. You've analyzed every detail. And deep down, beneath all your rational explanations and psychological frameworks, you know he was telling the truth." I wanted to argue to maintain my skepticism, but the dream felt too solid, the stone walls too cold and real, Diego's presence too distinct to be imagination. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing you're not already willing to give." "We're just waiting for you to admit it to yourself." I woke up at 3:33 a.m., the same time Marcus mentioned repeatedly, with absolute certainty that what I'd experienced wasn't a dream. It was a preview, a glimpse of what would happen when I finally stopped resisting and did what every part of me was screaming to do: go to the cave. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've tried everything to break free from this obsession. I've seen my own therapist, taken sleep medication, buried myself in other cases. Nothing works. The dreams continue. The whispers from the mirror fragment grow louder. And every day the pull toward Cerro Zapotecas becomes stronger. I know what's happening. I've diagnosed it in dozens of patients. This is how obsessive ideation works, a thought loop that reinforces itself until it dominates your entire mental landscape. The solution is cognitive behavioral therapy medication and distance from the triggering stimulus. But I can't bring myself to follow my own advice. Because what if Marcus was right? What if there really is a place where consciousness exists outside biological constraints? What if the entity in that cave is offering exactly what it claims? Knowledge, understanding, truth, beyond ordinary human comprehension. As a scientist, I should dismiss the possibility. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and personal testimony from people who died under mysterious circumstances isn't evidence, it's anecdote. But as a human being who spent her entire life asking questions about consciousness, reality, and the nature of existence, I can't let it go. My flight to Mexico City leaves in 4 hours. I've told my department chair I'm taking a research sabbatical. I've arranged for a guide, rented a car, made hotel reservations in Puebla. I've left detailed itineraries with 3 colleagues, set up automatic check-in protocols, taken every safety precaution I can think of. And I'm bringing equipment. Not just cameras and recorders, but medical sensors, heart rate monitor, EEG headset, blood oxygen sensor. If something happens to me in that cave, if I experience the same phenomena Marcus and Diego described, I'll have objective data. Proof that can't be dismissed as delusion or fabrication. That's what I tell myself anyway. But the truth I can barely admit, even in the privacy of my own thoughts, is that I'm not going to study the cave. I'm going because I want what Marcus found. I've spent 17 years explaining away mysteries, providing rational frameworks for experiences that frightened and confused people. I've been so confident in my ability to reduce the inexplicable to brain chemistry and cognitive bias. But what if I've been wrong? What if the people I dismissed as delusional were actually perceiving something real that my materialist framework couldn't accommodate? That possibility haunts me more than any ghost story. Last night I had the dream again. But this time it wasn't just Diego waiting in the cave. Marcus was there too, looking exactly as he had in his final video, exhausted but peaceful, his eyes that same impossible black. "You're going to come," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "Not because we're forcing you. Not because the entity is compelling you against your will, but because you recognize yourself in our story. You know that hunger for understanding. You've felt it your entire life." "And if I don't?" I challenged. "If I turn back now, forget about this case, go back to my normal life?" Marcus smiled sadly. "You won't. Because you can't. The seed is already planted. The question has already been asked. And you're the kind of person who has to know the answer no matter what it costs." He was right. I'm writing this on the plane. We land in 2 hours. By tomorrow night, I'll be on Cerro Zapotecas. By tomorrow night, I'll either confirm that Marcus Reyes suffered from a tragic delusion that led to his death, or I'll discover that he was telling the truth about something that will fundamentally change how we understand consciousness, reality, and existence itself. Either way, I need you to know I'm doing this willingly. I'm not being forced or manipulated or coerced. I'm making a rational choice to investigate a phenomenon that has already claimed at least 2 lives because the potential implications are too important to ignore. If I don't return, if I become victim number 19, then let this serve as documentation of my final days as Dr. Sarah Chen, forensic psychologist, skeptic scientist. And if I do return, change the way Marcus described, well, then you'll have your evidence that something impossible is happening in that cave, something that challenges everything we think we know about the nature of reality. The captain just announced our descent. Mexico City in 30 minutes. Puebla by this evening. Cerro Zapotecas tomorrow. I'm not afraid. I should be. Every survival instinct I have is screaming that this is a mistake. But instead I feel anticipation, curiosity, the same feeling I get when I'm on the verge of a breakthrough in my research. Marcus was right about something else too. The entity doesn't trap people through force. It lures them through the promise of knowledge, and for minds like ours, minds that value understanding above safety, that can't bear to leave questions unanswered, that's the most powerful trap imaginable. Because we don't see it as a trap. We see it as an invitation. The plane is landing. Time to find out if I'm about to make the biggest discovery of my career or the biggest mistake of my life. My money's on both. Dr. Sarah Chen's phone, final text message, October 18th, 2025, 11:47 p.m. Standing at cave entrance now, equipment all functional, recording everything. If you don't hear from me by tomorrow noon, send search and rescue to these coordinates, 19.0619 degrees, N 98.3106 degrees W. But honestly, I don't think I'm coming back, and I don't think I want to. Marcus was right. Whatever is in here, it's offering something I've been looking for my entire life. I can hear them calling, Diego, Marcus. Others I don't recognize. They sound peaceful, happy, like they found what they were searching for. I'm going in. Wish me luck, or don't. I don't think luck matters here. Only choice, and I choose to know. S. No further communication received. Found carved into stone wall at cave entrance, October 20th, 2025. The cave doesn't take us. We come willingly, because some questions matter more than survival. If you're reading this, you already understand. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. The hunger for knowledge is patient, but your body isn't. Official report, Mexican Federal Police, October 23, 2025. Dr. Sarah Chen, 42. U.S. citizen reported missing October 19th. Rental vehicle found at Cerro Zapotecas trailhead. Personal effects discovered inside cave system neatly arranged. Medical equipment functional but powered down. No signs of struggle. No body recovered. This marks the 19th disappearance at this location since 1975. Local authorities recommend permanent closure of cave entrance and increased patrol of mountain area. Recommendation denied by Tourism Board due to economic impact on region. Warning signs to be posted in English and Spanish. Case remains open but inactive. Anonymous post, Reddit are unresolved mysteries. November 2nd, 2025. Has anyone else noticed that all the Cerro Zapotecas victims were researchers, academics, or people investigating the earlier disappearances? Like the cave is specifically targeting curious people, people who can't leave mysteries alone. I've been studying the case files. Every single person who vanished there had the same profile, above average intelligence background in science or journalism history of investigating unexplained phenomena. It's like the place is choosing specific types of minds. Which raises a question. If you fit that profile and you know about this pattern, and you're still reading this thread trying to learn more, are you next just something to think about?